what Jay Shetty did for me was he gave me the gift of time.
Right.
He gave me the gift of peace for my morning to set the tone for my day, and it was amazing. Welcome back, friends, to Eat, Read, Sleep. I am Kalina.
And Tapas.
And this week we are going over a very famous, popular book, Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty.
Yes.
So, Tapas, I think that you have read this one before when it first came out, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
having read it before and having read it a second time now, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad I read it second time. So this is one of those books when I first read it. There's a lot of good takeaways, a lot of important things that Jay talks about in the book. And when you first read it, you're like, I'm gonna apply all these things at the same time. And you kind of like do one or two things and then you kind of lose track of it. So reading it a second time, there's things that I've already applied and now I kind of reintroduce some of the same topics again. So now I want to add those to my life.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought it was definitely worth it for me the second time to read it again
Yeah.
because it is a really good book. It kind of goes through a lot of different layers of your life to become a monk.
Hmm.
And again, I thought it's overwhelming initially because you have to change all the things about you. But then when you read it a second time, you're like, ah, okay. So in my mind, this is one of those books that you do need to come back to after you
Okay.
read it the first time.
Okay. This is my first time reading this book,
Hmm.
and you guys, I love this book so much. I have fallen in love with this book. This is probably one of my top favorite books because it's very different from the other type of self-help inspirational book. It's coming from the mindset of a monk. So, Jay Shetty actually did devote his 3 years, I believe, of his
Hmm.
lifetime to living in India and becoming a monk, understanding the monk mindset, and then he came back, shared his wisdom with everyone, and then eventually after a couple of years wrote this book. And I really appreciate it because, like you said, Tapas, you read this before, and then something you just said, you felt like you had to change yourself.
Hmm.
I don't feel like you need to change yourself. I think that's the cool thing about this book is it's really just kind of like with all books, it's not how many books you read, it's just picking the one book or the couple of lessons that really stick with you and just practicing on that. And I think
Yes.
Jay Shetty does a really good job of reminding us like what's really important to us, the values, the different types of meditations. It's a in practice activity book as well, which is what I really appreciate. There's, try this morning routines and things that you can do to actually apply the book to your life.
Hmm.
And because it comes from a monk mindset, I actually haven't seen that approach of explaining different things before, and I fell in love with this book. I'm so excited to talk about it today.
Awesome. Awesome. Love
So
it.
we're not debating this book. I think we're both in
Yeah.
line with this, that we absolutely both love this book. So overall, the premise of the book is that Jay shares his life. He talks about his background and then going to the ashram and learning how to be a monk and having the monk mindset. He just documents all of his findings here for us, and it's just very, very beautifully written, and it
Mhm.
makes a lot of sense. He breaks it down into three parts. um, the first is letting go,
Mm.
how to let go, and then second part is how to grow, and then the last part is how to give, which he says is the highest purpose of life, which was very beautiful to end the book with. And then in between, there's all these meditations and practices that you can do. And you guys know me, I'm a huge yogi. I love all the breath
Yeah.
work and all the breathing and all of that. So I was like, yeah, this is totally my vibe right here. I love
That's
it.
something I need to add back in my life, the breath work part,
Yeah.
because I don't think I do that enough.
He mentions journaling in here
Yeah.
too, and I have a gratefulness gratitude journal, and
Mhm.
I haven't done it, but there was a part in here where he says that there's research that people that actually do gratitude journals are like X% like way happier than other people, and I was like, oh, I definitely need to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, so shall we talk about the
Yes,
book? Let's
please.
get into it. So hopefully you guys have read the book. If you haven't, check out our summary.
Mhm.
I'm in costume today from our filming of it, but it does not do the book justice by any means. But please check out the summary and then come back and have this discussion with us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are as well. So feel free to add anything in the comments. All right, so let's get into this.
How did Jay even want to become a monk?
Okay,
Do you remember that part?
vaguely.
Pretty much like, I think he was down the typical path, like, as any Asian parents would want. They want their kid to be, doctor, engineer, all that kind of stuff, and I think he just felt like there was something that he needed to change in his life. He was in college, and he attended a seminar, and I think that
That's
seminar
right.
kind of
Yeah.
like changed his entire perspective, and he wanted to go down this path of like finding himself, finding his purpose. So that was really cool to do because how many of us kind of felt that way, especially when we were younger, where we're like, oh, is this really our calling? Is this what I want to do? And he wasn't sure about what he wanted to do, and he kind of took on this huge risk. And much to like, and his parents weren't on board with it at all. He's kind of ashamed to almost kind of tell his parents. But then as he started to go through the path, he's like, "Well, it doesn't matter. My parents like it.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for myself." That was really cool to see because it's a very brave move,
Yes.
in my eyes, and very courageous of him to do it. But it definitely helped.
I think it's a really cool story because he's so confident
Mhm,
along it, right? He shares his past, like you said, of how he was really almost bad in a way, getting in troubles,
mhm,
different crowds, wrong crowds, and doing bad things. And this just connected with him. And it's kind of like us in our journey, right?
mhm.
We've been doing things that we've been told or are, what's been expected of us. And then just one day we're like, it just doesn't feel right.
Right.
Let's do and follow our purpose and our calling. And so it takes a lot of confidence, and I that's what I got a lot of it from his introduction part of just what a great spirit he is, and he never really doubted himself. He just said, "I know this is right, and I'm going to go after it."
Yeah, and
Very admirable.
he never really chases what everyone would traditionally call success,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
He's kind of
Hmm.
just doing what he
Yeah.
needs to do. And so I think that was really, really amazing. And one thing he does say in the book as well is that he doesn't want everyone to become monks. He wants everyone to think like a monk, which is
Yep.
hence the book
Yeah.
title. Is that he doesn't want people to go into this entire like isolated lifestyle that monks do.
Yeah.
It's more about just think like a monk,
Yeah,
pretty much,
and
right?
he shares that he's all, "I did all the hard work for you
Right,
guys, like, all you
exactly.
gotta do is read this and you're solid."
Yep.
So, thank you, Jay. Alright, so I think that perfectly leads into the first part of the book, which is identity,
Hmm.
right? He starts off with a quote, which I really, really like. It's, "I am not what I think I am not what you think I am what you think I am," right? And it takes a second to
Hmm.
have all of that register and absorb, but it's so true in society, especially with social media these days, right?
Yes.
We Even though you know who you are, you start to self-doubt yourself because you're thinking about what someone else thinks, and we live in this perception of someone else's perception, and that's what we chase our dreams after.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us will take a picture or a selfie and then we're gonna go down the whole path of editing it a million times or picking the right one, not because we don't like how we look. It's more like, oh, what is somebody else gonna look at me and say, oh, this person's nose is too big or this side of the face is not too great. Like there's just a lack of confidence and a lack of validation that we seek from other people,
Oh, yes,
right?
validation, that's such the a strong word.
Yeah,
So true.
and so he kinda talked about that in identities, like, you have to know, we are in this constant state of we think of who we are in the eyes of other people, not
Mhm.
of what we actually
Yeah.
are.
So in there he says, "How can we recognize who we are and what makes us happy when we're chasing the distorted reflections of someone else's dream?"
Yep.
And then this reminded me of when we went through The Alchemist, right? It talks about like different dreams, and Four Agreements talks about different dreams as
Mhm.
well. And it's just so true. We're all living in this world of our own perceptions. Why care so much about what other people think? Like,
Yeah.
just do you and put out as much goodness as you can and live happily.
It's definitely very tough nowadays, I think, because we are much more social than
Hmm.
before,
Yep.
and there's a lot more, comments that are made,
Yeah.
and a lot of time we make comments because we make the same comments about somebody else, so we know that other people are judging us the same way.
Yeah.
And he also says, "Well, stop doing that too.
Yes. Yep.
Don't make comments about other
Stop
people.
judging other
Stop." Yeah,
people. Yeah.
and then you won't have that sense of mind like, "Oh, people are gonna judge
Yeah.
me." Like, no one really.
There's a lot more to this part. He talks about values, identifying your values, and your
Mhm,
values are shaped by a lot of social media, your parents, people, even strangers, right? Like what you hear and see from other people. So knowing what your true values are is really important to identify. And then he brings up this table that quadrants of
mhm,
potential, which I know we talked about briefly, which is really cool because it reminded us of what's it called, the time matrix,
yes.
right? And so the quadrant kind of breaks down into four parts of where you should be spending your time, and it's the same as the time matrix. We should be spending our time in quadrant two doing things that we're good at but also that we love.
When you guys were reading the book, definitely, he does encourage you write down your day-to-day activities and think about which quadrant you're normally in. A lot of people will stay in quadrant 1 or The one where
One, yes,
where
is
you pretty
where
much you're doing things that you don't love, but you're doing it because you have to do it?
you're really good. You're good
You're
at
good at
it.
it, yeah.
So, like your job,
Right,
essentially,
your
your
job.
skill set, your
Yep.
trade, whatever, you're good at it, but you don't necessarily
Yeah.
love it, right? So, we can speak from firsthand. We worked and lived in quadrant one for a very, very long
Mhm,
time. And it wasn't until like we had that light bulb and a bunch of unfortunate things that had to happen for us to realize it.
mhm.
And then we're like, now we're going to move over to quadrant two. And
Yes.
I can share, like, the happiness, the
Yeah.
freeing feeling, the weight, like, I feel so much lighter now than I did before because I'm doing what I love and what I'm good at.
Yeah, and I think the that's where the essence of even finding our values comes from because then we start to understand and identify who we really are,
Mhm.
right? And before, when you're spending a lot of your time in quadrant one, and you people ask you who you are, you just say, "Oh, I work at this," or
I
"I'm
do
this."
this. Yeah, you
Yeah,
define yourself by your
right,
job,
right. But
essentially.
when you spend in quadrant two, you start to have much more higher values, is what he calls it too, right?
Yeah. There's one thing in here he talks about value. He talks about comparative spending.
Hmm.
So there's a picture on there and it says, oh, every day, your coffee habit, say you spend $4 a day on coffee, that adds up to $150 a year on coffee.
Hmm.
And to a coffee drinker, you're like, "Oh, I need this. I have to do this every day. This is what makes me happy." Versus eating fresh, healthy choices, food that are healthy for you. It's a little bit more. It costs maybe a dollar 50 extra if you make that organic choice or that extra
Hmm.
leafy green choice. That adds up to, maybe $600 a year, half of what your coffee is. And to a person, you may say, "Oh, that's not worth it to me," right? So it's your value of what you think is important,
Hmm.
if something is worth it or not worth it. And I thought that was really eye opening for me because I usually always think that I always like, oh, it's an extra, $2 for guac. I don't know if I want this, but it's a healthy fat. It's good for you. And so
Right.
it makes me feel like, okay, like, you put your energy on what you know is good for you and we'll have a return on interest.
You have to know what you value because people will also spend a lot of money on cars and clothes, and they'll say, "Oh, this is valuable because this is a lot of money." But then,
Hmm.
is it truly valuable to you? Is it an actual value of yours, or
Hmm.
is it are you buying it because you're seeking acceptance from other people?
Yep,
Right.
and
So
you
yeah.
said it earlier, validation. A
Right.
lot of people do it because they think that it's cool or it looks nice, and then
Hmm.
it goes back to the opinions of others versus what you actually truly need for your own happiness.
Yes. I liked the next part, which is around negativity. I like how he does kind of address some of the negative stuff that we have in our minds,
Mhm,
as well as think about how we can use the negativity to our benefit.
mhm. Yep.
So, what do you take away from that?
So he says that negativity is everywhere. It's
Mm.
just in the world, and we can't necessarily avoid it, but it's what you do with it. So he introduces a concept called spot, stop, and swap.
Mhm,
So you spot the emotion that comes up, you spot that negativity, you spot whether or not you start blaming someone for something, you start gossiping about someone, you spot it. And then you stop. And when you stop, you're using this time to kind of assess the situation. You think through, why do I feel this way? What value does this bring to me? And then he also talks about thinking through, like, is there a different way to approach this? Is there a different way to address this and talk to someone? Say you're in a fight with someone, instead of having a heated argument where you say something that you might regret, can you reframe it in a different way?
mhm.
And then also, can you stop to channel your energy in a different method, potentially, writing in a journal or meditating or breath work? Like, there's different things that you need to do to stop, remove yourself from the situation or the emotion, and then swap it out for something good.
I think the swapping out part is where I think a lot of people will have to work on. It's easy to have negative thoughts. You're like, no, I'm not gonna think about it that way. I'm not gonna think of that perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
But the swapping part to something else, and I think it's really important because negativity is around us at all times, and I think a lot of time when we're around other negative people, we start to go down that
It's
path. Because he said
contagious.
it's contagious. Like, he said that even in the ashram when he was there, some he was annoyed because somebody would always complain to him, and just whining and whining and whining, and so Jay started getting also the same way.
Mhm.
It was like I was like, I can't help it.
Yeah.
So he had to also work on it proactively and say, you know what? No, I'm going to think of other things. I'm not going to go down that same path
Yeah.
that this person is going through. And I think it is so contagious nowadays, and especially in workplaces. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people will start to form a little group where it's just a group
A little
negativity,
click.
right?
Yeah.
and all you can do is just complain about what you're having to do, and it's not going to help you enjoy your job or even your career,
Yeah.
right?
He talks through a couple of different ways that you can remove that
Hmm.
negativity. So, stepping away from it altogether, disassociating yourself with it. There's something that he calls the 25-75
Hmm.
principle.
Like that.
And what that is for every negative person that you have in your life, say it's this person is like a family member, someone that you have to work with that you can't step away from or get
Mhm.
rid of in your life. If you have to deal with them, then for every one bad person or negative person, have three uplifting people. And so
Mhm.
these uplifting people should be better than you in terms of being happier than you or more spiritual than you so that they can elevate you and get you out of that.
I think that's a little hard to do. What do you I
To
thought
find someone that's
to
uplifting
to
or to,
find 3 people
I
there.
mean, you have me. What
Right.
more do you need?
You're the 3 people. So I should have 3 negative, 1 Kalina. That's what I should have. But I feel like when I'm thinking through, I'm lucky enough to have people that I think are very
Me,
positive,
me.
you
Just,
included.
just kidding.
You included.
Let go of the ego is what Jay would say.
Right, right. But I think when people are in that negative state, a lot of times they'll look around them.
They'll
They'll
seek that,
they'll
right?
seek more negative people.
Because the people will agree with them more and they'll feel more
Yeah.
validated.
So
Yeah.
it does start with you having to consciously think, okay, I'm gonna get out of this negative mindset,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna also try to influence others to also be more positive, and
Absolutely.
then you can say that's your 3 positive
Yeah.
people you
That's a
have.
good point. It has to always start with you. You can't
Yes.
rely on someone else to fix that for you. So if you're always going to be in a negative mindset, even surrounding yourself with three positive people
Mhm.
isn't going to do anything. If
Right.
anything, you might bring those people down. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you have to at least try and want it first.
Yep.
And then once you do, then you have to go out and find those people to help keep you accountable to that. In here, he also talks about negativity. It leads into anger,
Hmm.
which is not the same as negativity. Anger is a result of being deeply wounded and being hurt. And usually that leads to feelings of resentment or even revenge
Hmm.
almost. And then that helps explain the transformational forgiveness that he talks about. And I put this on our social media a couple times already because it really hit with me. What did you feel about when you read that transformation forgiveness, if anything?
An anger that develops because of your own mistakes. I think that's where a lot of times people get defensive and they
Oh,
become
yeah.
angry.
Right.
And I know I felt that way a lot of time where I would get really upset because it was my shortcoming, but I want to blame. I want to find something to blame it on.
Yeah.
So for me, it was definitely inside because I think it's a conscious thing you have to keep working on.
Yeah.
Even though like if someone like me who is usually really calm, I do have a sense of anger when I feel it coming on. But you have to like
Yeah.
I use a stop swap and that whole thing too because I need to breathe it out a
Yeah.
little bit.
And Jay says that that's normal.
Yeah.
All of us have that negativity. All
Hmm.
of us have that fear and the anger inside of us, and it's okay. And
Yes.
that's how we operate. That's never going to go away, but it's what you do with it that makes a difference.
Yes.
What I really loved about this is it gave me a little more grace for myself in
Hmm.
terms of forgiveness, because he says that a lot of people think of forgiveness as in black or white. Either
Hmm.
you forgive them or you don't, and he paints this forgiveness, transformational forgiveness chart as a four-step tier where you have, at the bottom is zero forgiveness, I won't forever forgive you. And then it goes up to conditional, I'll forgive you if, you do
Hmm.
this or if you say that. And then there's transformational forgiveness, which is where he says we should all aim to be at. And that's where you forgive without expecting anything in return.
Right.
And I thought this was really cool because he says you can forgive, and a lot of times forgiveness is done without even that person being there.
Hmm.
And it's really important to forgive, to allow that forgiveness for you, not for that other person. That kind of hit me a
Yeah.
little differently. And so he says, like, people who have passed away, people who are no longer part of your life, you still need to forgive them,
Yes.
even though you can't say anything to them. And so it allowed me to really internalize that it's more of a personal thing versus the other person thing.
Yeah, and sometimes forgiveness is less about you telling somebody else to make them
Hmm.
feel better.
Right.
It's more about you not holding that
Yeah.
that anger or frustration about somebody. And he does say like there is forgive and forget, but the main thing is also you do want to make sure you do forgive. It kind of reminded me of this story about this. It's like a while ago was a court case where this person had killed. this father's son, and the son had passed away because of some kind of fight that they had. And in the courtroom, the father got up to the defendant and said, "I forgive you."
Mm,
You know, I mean, imagine
powerful.
somebody saying somebody took away your son, and you get up in court and you say, "I forgive you." So that person was forever, and you can see the sadness and the true sadness really hit the person, but
Yeah.
it made them both feel better because they actually
Yeah.
hugged it out in court, and it was just a powerful moment. And it kind of, and whenever I was reading this chapter, I was like, that whole court case was in my mind. I'm like, that's such a powerful thing. If something like that ever happened to me, I don't know if I can ever forgive that person. But he said it's more about you getting over it as well because it's going to help you become a much better person
Because he
overall.
says once you can forgive, you find peace of mind.
Yes.
And that's ultimately, what you want to aim towards. He says monks, they don't hinge their personal emotions on
Hmm.
anyone else's behavior. It's just within yourself. And so this, like how powerful is that
Yeah.
that story you just shared about the court? Imagine if everyone in the world
Yeah.
operated in that way, how much more beautiful of a world we could live in if we can just let go of our ego, let go of the blame, and just forgive and love each other that
Hmm.
way. It's just people make mistakes. And I think that's what is so hard is that we walk around expecting no one can make mistakes, right?
Hmm.
It's not okay to make mistakes. And that's why we grow up in a society where everyone is just, they have this fear of failure. They're so scared of failing. And whenever they fail at something, it just sets them back, holds them back. They're so hurt and
Hmm.
it's not the way that it should be. So I love that chapter. It's a great way to start off the book. And then he goes into fear,
Fear. And
the other F word.
the other F word. And I kind of attributed a lot of what he said about fear to Ryan Holiday and Courage is Calling,
Mm,
because he also kind of goes through fear as well. And one of the things he said is fear is driven by attachment and control.
yep.
So, what were your thoughts about
So
fear?
then if fear is caused by attachment, then the cure for fear is
Detachment.
detachment.
Yep.
And that was really powerful for me. I've never really thought about detaching from I've thought about detaching from physical, personal things like people, but never about detaching from feelings and emotions. He also
Hmm.
later goes on to talking about detaching yourself from your mind and
Hmm.
considering your mind as another entity that you have to work through as like something that someone that you have a relationship with. So
And the one of the exercises he has in the chapter is about questioning your fear. Why are you fearful? I think
mhm.
that's so powerful because it does kind of help us understand where it roots from.
Mhm.
Whether it be not wanting to speak in public or not feeling confident about a certain situation that you're going through. He says when you detach from the fear and you look at it from third person, it really does kind of help you understand why and where this fear is coming from, and then you can use it as a strength.
Yeah,
If you can actually turn your fear into a strength and say, "Oh, this is why I'm so afraid," or "This is why I'm so cautious about this,"
yeah,
you actually will start to become much stronger
yeah,
because then you're not gonna have that constant fear of like, "Oh, maybe we're not making a lot of money or we're not gonna do this." That's all gone,
yeah.
right?
He says in there to kind of summarize what you just said, the problem is that we fear fear
Hmm.
versus
Yes.
fearing not understanding what our fear is telling
Right.
us, right? Like that should be the scarier part. If we don't recognize what fear is telling us and
Hmm.
using it to our advantage, like you said, utilizing as a strength or identifying what is going to be upcoming so that we can solve for it or be prepared for it,
Hmm.
then that's when you should really fear the fear.
Yeah.
Removing yourself, detaching yourself from emotions, I think that was just really powerful. Detaching yourself from everything and understanding that there is no ownership of anything in this world. I
Yes.
really connected with that as well because he says all of your achievements, everything that you own, everything that you have, it is not yours.
Hmm.
It is because someone else helped you or it came along the way from this or that. And I think that's where a lot of it came from for me. It was like I felt like I had this right. I felt like I had this entitlement because I earned it. I worked hard for it. But when you can let all of that go, man, it feels so light when you feel like you have no sense of connection.
Yes.
And he brings in there, it doesn't mean that you're indifferent.
Right.
It just means you can value the time that you had with it that much more.
And he does kind of bring it to a level where he says even your children are not yours.
Yes.
right? Like,
Mhm.
and because a lot of people are attached to their family, they're attached to their
I
kids,
love that you brought this up, by the way.
and it's a really crazy concept to think about because I'm like, oh, it's my kids. I love my
I
daughter so
made my
much,
my kids,
right?
right? Yeah.
But like it's like no, they will go on to become their own people, and their life is their own life, not what you control.
Absolutely. I actually had a conversation with a friend this morning about this where we see parents so often try to control their kids. They manipulate their kids without trying to be evil about it.
Right.
Not manipulating, I always feel like it's like a strong evil word, but
Hmm.
it's not. They're trying to control their kids and tell their kids what to do, how to dress, what to eat, all of these things. And these children, they don't have any say in anything, and they grow up feeling that this is how they lose their confidence because they're never able to make their own decisions. And then
Hmm.
when you're an adult, all of a sudden you're expected to make all these decisions on your own, and that's when you're riddled with all this anxiety and fear because you've
Right.
never been taught to,
Yeah.
right? If we as parents allowed and understood that our kids are actual their own human beings, we don't own them. We're here to help guide them with
Hmm.
making their own choices, making their own mistakes. And then when they do make the mistakes, we help them. We explain that this is okay and what we can learn for next time. Oh my goodness. Imagine how well rounded children would feel, how confident they would be when they grew up, and how much value they would be able to carry on and share with the world.
Yes. That's so true because what I found is that if you're controlling of your kids and their future and trying to manipulate them, not manipulate them as well, I think what ends up happening is that later on in life they start to blame
Yes. Yeah.
others or blame you,
You.
right?
Mhm.
And it's never a guilt I think a parent would ever want to have to like feel like okay I did this to my child
Yeah.
because if you love them enough you want them to make their own decisions. So like I love what you said, you want to shape them and have them make their own decisions so that way in the future if they do make a mistake they can own it themselves instead
Yeah.
of saying oh my mom and dad
Yeah.
created this bubble that I'm in now, and
Yeah.
it just creates a very negative feeling about your relationship
Yeah.
with your
I think
kids.
it's the core of it is realizing that you can't control another human being and you can shape them, but if they don't turn out the way that you think they should be, or they turn out to be quote quote bad in a
Mhm.
way, it also is not a reflection of you as a
Right.
person. And I think that's where a lot of parents hold on to, is because, oh, if I mess up my kid, then it'll be my fault. And it's not.
No.
Like, people are who they are and they're going to be who they're going to be. They're going to do what they're going to
Yep.
do. You just have to let go of that ego and
Yeah.
realize that you can just help them. Okay, so let's go into intention. That
Hmm.
kind of serves into that. So, how can you be intentional with your day and everything that you do? Like setting your, he says it in here, which I really liked.
Hmm.
Say your name out loud,
Hmm.
like almost like a prayer or meditation, and then say what your intentions are out loud. Speak it into the universe and then
Hmm.
live your intention. And I
Hmm.
think I always think about intention
Hmm.
inside, but since reading this book, I actually have been saying out loud, and it's trippy, you guys, to sit there and be like, Kalina, today, and then start
Right.
talking about it. But the more you say your name, also, I actually feel like I'm learning to be a little more confident, and I'm actually learning to love myself a little bit more by
Mhm.
being able to put your name and your words out there into the universe like that. It's that energy that you create. I'm big on the energy and
Right,
vibes.
right.
So it's just it intention is one thing, but living your intention is another thing, and then understanding all of the whys of it.
I think being intentful to your day is kind of like manifestation as well.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
a lot of times, if you say this is my intention, and you don't say like your intention is an achievement. So like let's say I want to do this, I want to do this task today. That's not what the intention should be.
Right.
It's more about alignment of priorities. So like so this is what I wish to accomplish today, and this is what I want to do, become a better person. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to win the race." That's an achievement. You want to be more intentful about what's that race going to provide you,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I
And
like what you just
that
said
was a
there.
good perspective. We also did this little exercise in our book summary as well, where we talk about, Tapas, you want to be a filmmaker,
Hmm.
right? A film producer. Why? Do you want to be a film producer because of the accolades and the achievement that comes with it? Or do you actually want to put in the hard work and the time and the energy and live the setbacks that will create who you are as a person so that you can be a filmmaker? And
Yes.
he says that not a lot of people think about the hard work that goes into it. They just think about just want to be this person versus I want to do all these things that lead up to being that person. The one thing that he said in here, the term I wish. So how many times do we hear
Mm,
that from people, right? Oh, I wish I can do this. I wish that person was like this. I wish, whatever it is. I wish is actually code for I don't want to do a damn thing differently.
mhm.
Like I'm just going to sit here.
I'm guilty of this. I am. I wish I could have this camera, or I wish I could do this.
You sure can.
All right.
Work your ass off for it.
Right. Yeah.
So then that goes into purpose. This is going
Hmm.
to be the second portion of the book, the growth part, how to
Hmm.
grow. And that goes into purpose.
The Dharma, right?
Mhm.
So, what was the equation again? I always forget it.
It is
Passion.
passion plus expertise plus usefulness.
Yes. It's, he kind of ties it back to saying that everyone should be living out their dharma,
Mhm.
or dharma, as we try to say. Um, and it's really important to align yourself. So, like, find what your dharma is. You have to understand what it actually is, and then that's where you can start to develop it. So don't just create a purpose, or create something that you just out thin air. You have to make sure that you go back to and say, this is what my dharma is going to be. This is what my passion is going to be. And it's I'm going to live my life out. And he has an extra on that as well. So I like this part a lot because I think when I think of my purpose, it was only around passion. I didn't have the other factors involved
Yes,
in it.
I agree. And I do apologize. This is actually where he goes through the quadrants of potential
Mm,
in here of
yeah.
what you love and what you're spending your time on. So once you find that, and there's one thing in here that I thought was new for my understanding is
Hmm.
that your passion is for you
Hmm.
and your purpose is for others. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes people intermingle all of those and you have to understand that you have to add your skill set, your expertise, and then how you're going to use that to help other people to actually realize what your true calling is.
What's the next part? Routine.
The routine, the
All
one that
right.
you like.
So this is part where about kind of the morning routine, or just your day to day, right?
Hmm.
Starting off the morning very peacefully, no social media, warm, soft alarms. If you need alarm clock, let that be the one that raises you up, not just that regular iPhone one where it like screams at you, wake up, wake up. I think it's so important because the morning is the best way to kind of start your entire day. Obviously, it is, but in terms of like how your mood's gonna be,
Yeah.
because if your morning is chaotic, you're running around, you slept in, you're running, the entire day is not
Yeah.
gonna look good. So he does say be very intentional with your morning. I know you just started a new routine,
I'm
right? Your mornings,
so happy to share this, you guys. Like,
yeah.
I'm one of those, like, literally, I'll hit the snooze button for 2 hours. Like, every 7 minutes, I'm that lazy that I will snooze. And I love sleeping in if I can. But when I read this, it made so much sense. Like, if you wake up to a striking alarm, you feel that panic within you, and
Hmm.
that carries throughout your day. How you
Hmm.
start your day is how you spend the rest of the day. And I firmly believe that your morning, and what I'm realizing from this book is that your morning is so intimate
Hmm.
and it's all yours. And for you to wake up and look at your phone right away, you're inviting every one of those people, every single unnecessary um, subjects into your life the first thing you do when you wake up, and that's not necessary. Your body is not made to process all of that right away, and that's why we stay in the state of anxiety and
Hmm.
stress all day long. We're overwhelmed with so much information. And so I've been trying to go to bed earlier and
Hmm.
allowing my body to wake me up at whatever time it says, because
Hmm.
my body says I'm ready. And the first day I did this, I actually woke up at 3:45 in the morning.
Wow.
And I woke up and I was like, all right, my body says, usually I'd be like, I still got like hours. I'm gonna go back to
Yep.
sleep. But I was like, if my body says I'm up, let's wake up and give this a shot. And I woke up, I kept on the low light. I put on some chakra frequency music and I started meditating, doing my yoga. I read a book. I spent a whole hour all by myself. And it was the most amazing
Mhm.
feeling ever. And then by then it was probably like 5 o'clock. Then I started getting ready, and then my kids woke up. I started making breakfast, and I was going at a pace that I never usually get to have. And what he, what Jay Shetty did for me was he gave me the gift of time.
Right.
He gave me the gift of peace for my morning to set the tone for my day, and it was amazing. I wish and I hope that everyone listening here can at least give this a try for just even one day, just try it. Go to bed at a reasonable hour, maybe anywhere between 8 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Mhm.
when you start to feel like a little bit tired, and then let your body tell you when to wake up. Um, I know some people, like my best friend, we call her Sleepy Panda. She might never wake up. She can sleep for 12 hours straight, but like figure out a good schedule and time. It's different for everyone, obviously, and depending on your work schedule, if you work late shifts and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out a way to kind of incorporate that, because it is so cool. Like we always
Mhm.
talk about, oh, I don't have time, I don't have time. But when you make time, but you make time for yourself,
Right.
wow, that is a crazy, amazing feeling. Like you're prioritizing you.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing is the gift of time is what he calls it, right? You've people always say they don't have time to do this, they don't have time to do anything.
Yep.
I found that waking up early for me allows me to do my workout. I can also work on the projects that I want to work on early in the morning before my daughter and my wife are awake, so that way I can just be in a complete state of like quiet
Yeah.
peacefulness, so I can also get my best thinking done.
Yeah.
There's two things about this one that I do break the rule, which is first thing he says is, don't look at your phone.
No.
I actually do,
You do?
and I don't. I look at my phone not to look at social media. I look at my phone because I need that lo-fi. And you know this in the office. I always have lo-fi music blaring all
Yeah.
the time. I need that music just
Yeah.
to kind of calm me down a little bit. So
Yeah.
I need that phone for that, and that's the only reason why I have my phone, is because I need that music to just kind of like, okay, bring it in.
Have Alexa do it.
Or
Alexa, play lo-fi.
well, she'll but the Alexa will play random things all over the house and wake up my daughters,
You
and
can
so
program it.
I know. I probably could do a better job of that. So that's one thing, and another thing that that you mentioned earlier was that he also says, let your body wake you up, and that's because biologically speaking, when you wake up from an alarm, sometimes you're middle of your sleep, your REM sleep, and
Yep.
that's why you become more tired and you're exhausted. But if you actually wake up naturally, that's
Yeah.
when your body says, "I'm done with that sleep cycle
Yeah.
and I'm ready to be awake now," you actually will find the
Mhm.
energy. I thought I could never work out in the morning. I needed the energy, but actually you have it because you woke up when your body says, "Okay, I'm good. Let's go."
Absolutely. Your
Right?
your melatonin is still being processed during that
Yes.
time, and so people wake up and they're tired, they're yawning, they're groggy. It's because you didn't wake up at the right sleep cycle
Right.
time.
Yeah.
All right, the mind. I like this one. This is where he goes into the monkey mind or the monk mind.
Yep.
I've never heard of these concepts before, and it
Right.
makes so much sense.
Summarize it was saying the monkey mind is your childish mind, and that's the one that's more impatient, and the monk mind is the more adult mind,
Yeah.
the more patient,
So
more mature.
imagine your mind like a jungle,
Mhm.
and you've got these monkeys swinging around from thought to thought, challenges to challenge, problems to problems. So, in the beginning of the book, in the introduction, he actually gives some examples, which we also posted up on our social media as well. So, for an example, let me give you some things that would put you in the monkey mind. So, being overwhelmed by multiple branches, complain, compare, criticizes, overthinking, procrastinating, being distracted by small things, being demanding or entitled. Those are all things that are part of the monkey mind. If you want to have a monk mindset, then you would be more focused on the root of the issue, be more compassionate, caring, collaborative, being enthusiastic, determined, and patient. So it kind of allows you when you read it, like I was like, oh man, I'm
Um,
total a monkey over
yeah.
here. I'm not sitting over here swinging from branch to branch.
Yep.
But I will tell you, since we read Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Wynn, oh my gosh, it's guys pick up that book too. Like
Mhm.
that book and this book has been amazing for me and my mindset and helping me be more not necessarily monk mind. I'm still working on that, but more at peace where I'm single tasking versus multitasking and
Mhm. And he did mention that as well. Like single tasking is super important because that way you can give your full attention. You're more present.
mhm,
A lot of times, why people jump from branch to branch is because they're trying to do so many things at once and not necessarily
yeah.
present with what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're shuffling a lot of different things in their life, and that causes you to go down this chaotic mindset at
Yeah.
all times. And that's why you feel like your life is chaotic.
Yeah. Oh man, I felt so seen during that part. I was like, oh man, being a multitasker has been like my
What was your motto again?
at
You always
work when
remind me
I
of
was
this.
working, mine was if you're only doing one thing, you're doing nothing.
Hmm.
And it's so crazy to look back and be like, the work environment that I was in required me to think that way and made me feel like I was only good at my job if I was going a million miles an hour doing 20 different things at once.
Right.
And then in turn expecting everyone else to do the exact same thing.
Exactly.
Like it's insane. How can you produce quality work and growth and progress and good outcomes if you're always being like that?
And isn't it in this book? I believe it is. He says that was it 95% of people who think they can multitask actually can't multitask.
Yeah, it
There's like
was
a
in
very
this book. Yeah.
short percentage of people who
Yeah.
can actually multitask
Yes.
effectively,
Yes.
right? So like most of us who think like myself, who thinks, oh, I can definitely multitask.
Yeah.
That's what I used to say when in interviews. Oh, it's one of my strengths. I can
Yes.
multitask.
Right.
I really can't multitask.
Yeah.
I'll do things very poorly if I end up
Yeah.
having to do it.
No, I agree, same. When I multitask, my mind literally blanks out on
Yeah,
something else, and it's just you're not fully there.
yeah,
Do
I agree.
you feel like you're leaning towards a little bit more monk
Mhm.
mind reading this and practicing?
I,
Yeah,
I think I
definitely.
think the just the active thoughtfulness of making sure that I'm not jumping from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
But if I'm editing a video or whatever we're doing, like I'm just saying, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm more present. It's helped with that.
Yeah. I really like how he separates your mind
Yeah.
from your body, right?
Mm,
Because it allows you to have a relationship with it where you're working on a relationship, where you're
hmm.
getting to know your mind, and it's okay to uh, grow and build on what you have
Hmm.
versus that almost like a victim mentality of, well, this is who I am, this is my brain, and I can't really do anything about it. So he allows it in a way that we can say, like, I can cultivate on this and I can make it more peaceful, more monk-like,
Yeah.
and grow. In the mind, before we move on to the next part, he also talks about perspective, and
Hmm.
I want to share this real quick because I
Hmm.
just shared it on our social media how important it is to have perspective because when you don't have the right perspective, it can lead you down that path of fear and negativity and all of these things. And so there's an exercise in here where he says to kind of rate your perspective, like what's the worst thing that could happen to
Hmm.
you, and then use that as a scale.
Hmm.
And then when something happens, like your tire goes flat or your car breaks down or something bad happens, you put that on your perspective scale and you're like, okay, well, is it as bad as I really think it is in this moment? Am
Yep.
I being emotionally driven, or should I just be like whatever and just
Yeah.
move on?
It's a very powerful exercise because it does kind of help you not necessarily spend too much time complaining
Hmm. Yeah.
or feeling down about yourself because
Yeah.
you're like, well, it could be a lot worse in what I can tolerate as bad,
Yeah.
right? Because everyone has different perspective. Everyone has different sense of like, oh, this is how bad it could be.
Yeah.
Mine's, I know for me it's definitely a lot crazier, and I'm like, okay, well, that's not as bad as that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in having the same emotions
Yeah.
as if that worst thing was going to happen.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So, and then some of the same tones from the beginning of the book flows through this as well. There's a lot
mhm.
of detachment. There's a lot of nothing owns you, intention. So I really like that
Yep.
reiteration of it. And then it goes into the ego. I'm
Yes.
gonna let you talk about this part.
So he says there's two egos. There's the ego that's who you are. It's your thought process and all that kind of. And there's a false ego. That's the one that has the sense of like hierarchy. I'm better than everyone
I'm the
else,
best.
and
Yeah.
I'm the best. And a lot of people will spend their time on the false ego side,
Hmm.
and live in that constant state of comparison, and also that constant state of like I'm better than. Kind of going back to Ryan Holiday's book Ego is the Enemy, a lot of same takeaways for me in this one.
Hmm.
um where I need to just make sure I'm like focusing on not judging other people and not thinking better than others,
Yeah.
or even when I'm gossiping, okay, well, I'm not going to be negative about it a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
So
He shares that there's a clear distinction between having an ego and having self-esteem and being
mhm.
confident about
Yep.
yourself, which I really like because I think some people who are confident, even rightfully so, they come off egotastic
Mhm.
because they don't know how to present themselves and they focus on probably the lesser detail that they should focus on. So, a really good table on that and how to go
Yep.
through like what's the difference between ego and self-esteem. He talks about celebrating small wins, soliciting
Mhm.
feedback. Don't buy into your own hype, which I know you're a really big advocate for,
Mhm.
right? So, like, whenever someone says something that's bad, don't listen to it. But also, when someone says something good, also don't fall
Right.
for that as well, right? Just kind of be neutral with that. And that
Mhm.
helps you stay grounded, which I really respect. You're really good at that. And you're always good at reminding me of that as well. And then that goes into part three,
Mhm.
to give.
To give.
Yep.
So, he goes over relationships in this one, and
Mm-hmm.
also gratitude is the first thing, relationships, and then he goes into service.
Yeah.
Right. So gratitude. I don't. So I've been journaling for a while, and this is a part that made me feel the most seen, because when I would journal because of my day, my frustrations. Here's the things that I can't stand, but I'm not actually talking about like, what I'm thankful for.
Yes. Uh
So
huh.
I think I told you that I stopped journaling because I'm like, well, now that we're doing this, I don't have a lot
Yeah.
of frustrations that are happening in my mind, or so I don't have a need to journal.
Mm-hmm.
But after reading this, I was like, I have a need. I need to be
Yes.
more thankful. I need to have gratitude, and I should make my journal about things that I
Ma-
am grateful for.
Yeah.
So, and you say you already have a gratitude journal, right?
I do, I
Hmm.
don't use it, so I do want to start
Yeah.
using it, yeah, it just he talks about different ways to express gratitude, so
Hmm.
journaling is one of them. Another one that he says in here, is to, just practice gratitude in everything, like
Hmm.
a meal that you have, we're sitting here drinking tea, let's cheers to the fact that we
Yes.
can sit together and have tea and
Hmm.
talk and share our findings with our listeners and our viewers, and hopefully they can take away something great from this as well and turn on be grateful and express gratitude to those
Yeah.
around them. The one thing in here that I really really liked is he says you can verbally express and communicate your gratitude to people around you, because I don't think any of us do that enough.
Right.
I will say I have one friend, her name is Ellie. She is probably the best at gratitude, and she's always showing love. She's always, picking up the phone call, either leaving me a message, even just like a quick voice memo, just to be like, I just wish you know you're awesome. She'll send me cards in the mail
Hmm.
and small gifts. And it's so amazing to know that I am in the presence of someone that has such a great heart like
Hmm.
that. It makes me feel like I want to be a better person. And so if we could all spread that and share that and be like that and verbally communicate it, like how beautiful would
Yeah.
this world be? He also talks about the kindness of strangers as
Hmm.
well. And this actually isn't really a part of it, but I was just listening to his podcast that he did with Vanessa Hudgens a little while ago, and they're talking about how she likes to make eye contact with strangers and like look at them in the car and like try to dance and try to get them to like laugh and just spread that happiness to
Hmm.
random strangers. And I always have been that person where I'm like just walk, keep my eyes down, don't pay attention to anyone, and just like not whatever. And now I'm actively trying to look at people and smile, and wow, it's really cool. Like, you feel so good, and then when you see the other person smile, it just feels so great to be able to spread that small little bit of joy in someone's day.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't do it because they don't want to come off as creepy. Um, right? Like imagine it's
Well,
like
hopefully now you're making me sound
like I'm
like
walking
doubt
down the street and
myself.
I see like a spot, and I'm like, oh, what a
This girl's
creeper.
on crack.
But no,
But who cares? I don't care what people think. Maybe if they smile and think I'm creepy, then that's all good,
I
right?
I thi I think it's about the if you're genuine about it,
Yes.
right? People can see like that you're not just doing it to be creepy. Like
Yeah.
people will can, and it's like a human instinct we already have. Like we know when someone is going to be genuinely happy, and you can just feel the energy.
Yeah.
So like I'm not saying that you're coming off as creepy. I'm just saying like a lot of times people will not want to do it because I don't want to be creepy. But
Yeah.
if you're just genuinely happy and you want to share that with somebody else, you even if you not have, don't have the biggest smile in the world, you can still provide
Yeah.
that energy.
Yeah. So then it goes into relationship,
Hmm.
and I do want to talk about the circle of love. This
Yes.
has been like life changing for me.
Yes.
Okay. So circle of love, he talks about in our relationships, there are relationships where, there's always a giver and
Mhm,
a taker, right?
mhm,
Someone always expresses a little more love. Someone always doesn't express as much gratitude. And so
mhm.
when you're the person that's giving all the love and you don't get it back in return, it doesn't feel as good. And
Yes.
then sometimes that leads to a breakdown of the relationship where someone doesn't feel appreciated. And what he talks about here is that network of compassion that I've never, ever thought about before.
Mhm,
So, what Jay Shetty says from the monk mindset is whatever you put out into the world will always come back to you. And so, what this means is if you're showing love to someone that doesn't necessarily show it back to you, let go of that expectation.
mhm,
Don't expect that anything in return. You're showing love because you love, right? But take it a step further and look around you and
mhm,
realize that you are getting that love back in return, but from other people in your
mhm,
life. And that was just like, to me, I was like, wow, I've been so blinded this whole time because I've been expecting this from this one person. When I look around, I've got people like you, I've got my friends, I've got a network of people that are such good people that give me love, and I need to recognize it more and be
mhm.
more aware of it.
Yes, and I think that was kind of an eye opening for me too, because I was the same way too. And I would give love, and I'm like, why am I? Like, why isn't that person just reciprocating it back to me? And he even says like, sometimes like your mom will call you every single day. Your mom's providing you love. That's the love you're
Yes.
seeking, right? And she's calling you every day, but you're not providing it to
Yeah.
her, and so you're missing out on that love. And then now your mom is also going to is going to be the same thing. We're like, oh, why is my son not providing me love too? So
Yes.
you're getting it back in some way or another from someplace else. You
Yes.
have to just be open to it and just know that, hey, and I think constantly pushing love out and giving it to the world, even if it's not being reciprocated, again, you will get it some way
Yeah.
somehow.
And I think this pertains to a lot more than just love, right?
Hmm.
Love, goodness, kindness, gratitude, everything in the world. That whatever you give out, you get back.
Yes.
Just open your eyes and
Yep.
see where it's coming from. I
I,
love that so much.
And I think the one part from the relationship that I took away this time around was around be more communicative about what you expect in a relationship
Yes.
too,
Yes.
right? A lot of times, when especially in marriages, like when there's fights happening, maybe my wife, like if I'm frustrated with her about something, and in my mind I'm just like, oh, like she should know like, this is what's upsetting me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like she's like she has no idea, right?
Yeah.
But that's because I have not made it clear to her that this is what I expect from
Yeah.
you. And if you're more intentional about that, then the person can say, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from, and then they can help you out if they
Yeah.
truly love you, right? And so I think a lot of times, a lot of spouses will go through back and forth because they're expecting the other person to know
To read
what,
their minds.
right, and
Yeah.
and that's not true. So that was something that I took away this time.
Yeah, Jay Shetty and Vanessa Hudgens also go into this in their relationship as well. And Vanessa Hudgens shares like when she started dating her current husband, she like laid it all out. This
Hmm.
is what I expect in a relationship. And Jay also did the same with his wife, Roddy. And it's like this is who I can
Yeah.
be. This is who I cannot be. Like take it or leave it. And
Yep.
it's if all relationships, like you said, were that clear
Hmm.
in communication, we wouldn't have as many breakdowns of relationships as we see in the world. And then the last part of the book goes into the highest purpose and why this book is even here.
Hmm.
It's for the sole purpose of service.
Yes.
Everything that we do, everything that we are here for in this life is to provide service for others. And when you can find your dharma, your dharma, and have service and help others, then that's when your life will have meaning and you'll feel fulfilled.
When he says service in the book, right? A lot of people will immediately think, oh,
Like charity
donating, charity
work. Yeah.
work, right? Like soup kitchen, all that kind of stuff. But he said it could just be just having some sort of service in your life that you are doing just to help your community,
Yeah.
right? Um, I know when you and I were talking about this book, and we're like, how are we providing service? And I'm like, well, we're doing this, right? We're recapping books that we love, and we want to share these books with the rest of the
The
world,
meaningful
the meaningful
messages. Yeah.
messages, and what we take away, and hopefully that can help other people as well. That's kind of us providing service, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not doing it to make money out of it because we're not, but like it's more just about like
Right.
just helping others, and even just getting those 2 or 3 comments and saying, oh, this is amazing, thank you so much for sharing, that in itself tell
Yeah.
me Yes, we provide a
I
service.
had 3 people reach out to me today and said that they were gonna buy this book
Yes.
and read it, and 2 of them said, "It's in my Amazon cart right now."
Nice,
Of the
nice.
2,
Love it.
1 actually bought it, and I was just like, "This is amazing," because I truly genuinely love this book, and I
Mhm,
think that it can change the world. If everyone can pick up this book and read it and take away even just a few things from it,
mhm.
it will do wonders.
Huge fan of this book. I mean, I think it's my second time reading it. I'm probably gonna go back to it a third time because every time I read it, I find things that I want to continue work
Yeah.
on because I eventually want to think like a monk. It just I would
Yeah,
love to
agree.
have his sense of stillness that he
Yes,
has,
I love that
right?
word, stillness.
And I seek that so much whenever, especially whenever I listen to his podcast or I watch his his amazing interviews that he does with a lot of celebrities, and you can see that they feel really comfortable around him and they feel more open,
Yeah.
and so you see a different side of them is because he is providing that calmness in them.
If I ever meet Jay Shetty or see him, I will pull that creep card like you said, and I will just run up to him and give him the biggest hug because I don't know him, but his energy and
Hmm.
everything that he lives for and the service that he's providing, I am just so grateful for,
Yes,
and it's
agreed.
amazing. All right, you guys. Well, that is our take on Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. We also have a summary if you don't get a chance to read the book, but we do recommend that you do read it and then supplement it with our summary and kind of see we do a fun spin and take on it so that you can kind of recall the book in a different way. But think like a monk, train your mind for peace and purpose every day. Guys, my name is Kalina. This is
Tapas.
Tapas, and we're here with Eat, Read, Sleep, where we come together as a community to vibe with books. And we're so grateful to have you here with us today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on this journey with us. We'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.